Morning. Our parts have come in at the local John Deere dealership to repair our Hagee boom, so you know what we're doing today. There she is in all of her glory, our $950 bracket. Talk about highway robbery. I guess they know when you're buying one of these, they got you right where they want you. It's no big deal. I only had to refinance the house to pay for that. My wife doesn't know it yet, but she agreed. Speaking of refinancing the house, maybe even refinancing the farm more like it, there's a 9R640. That is the biggest tractor Deere currently makes. Although I do think there's a bigger one in the works. That model right there is the top dog in the Deere lineup currently. I'd love to have one of those. I don't exactly know if I had to guesstimate the purchase price of something like that outright. You're probably looking at $600,000 machine, $625 maybe, I'm not sure. Basically that translates to it being $625,000 over our budget. No rains to report, which shouldn't really surprise any of you. Corn does not look bad first thing in the morning. It is a little bit uneven. I will say that I think that our soybeans have kind of stagnated in growth. We dealt with the same pattern last year where it was extremely dry in June, although probably not as bad as it's been this June, and the soybeans essentially just stopped growing. Yesterday I was behind the wheel of a semi all day. Chris, Jeff, and I got that middle corn bin empty. We're now moved to the south one, last bin of the year. I was just sneaking by to supervise from afar. We got other projects to work on and I don't want them wrangling me in to help with something. Let's get this boom back together. We did all of our disassembly here at the red shed. I don't believe that I'm gonna need any heavy hitting disassembly equipment, so we'll just take this back to the Hagee. It should be pretty simple stuff. Just got to bolt the hardware back on, drop the pin into the arm, and then connect the winglet in, and then hook up all of our plumbing and electrical. We'll be good to spray again. Oh, I forgot one thing. I'll also have to retighten the tensioner because that's kind of important. Spend all of that money on this piece and it comes with chipped paint. You're not paying for quality, you're paying for the fact that you can't buy this anywhere else. I ran into my first non-major issue of the project. I ordered all new bolts. I figured might as well just replace the hardware. It's very cheap, and at the end of the day, you'd rather have something new than something that looks like that, especially if you can't even get a nut started on it. It looks like that the product technical manual was wrong on the part system. It said that all of the bolts are this length, which is a shorter length. These 3 on top and 3 on bottom are quite a bit longer. I mean, they're probably an extra inch to inch and a half. I'm gonna go ahead and secure it with 3 less bolts than I need. These were on it originally when I took it off. The top 3 were in a lot better shape. I assume they didn't get nitrogen on them. This is what liquid nitrogen does to metal, corrodes it. I'm actually fairly surprised that some of these bolts aren't like a stainless steel or a non-corrosive metal. Bolt these down, we can still put it back together, and then I'll run into the dealership, return the unnecessary bolts that were the wrong length, and get the correct ones to finish this out. There's a lot of projects where you look in your toolbox and you're like, why in the world would I ever need an extension with an angled driver on the end? And then there's one project like this where you're like, wow, I'm really glad I bought this 2 years ago and haven't used it since, because there was something that I needed it for, and it was getting in behind the boom to tighten these. Other than getting those missing bolts and tightening it back up, we're now ready for the main event. Putting the hinge on and putting the winglet on. I'm sure most of you recall the previous video and the trouble we had getting one of those pins out from the arm or the hinge in the middle that allows the breakaway to pivot. We got it out after using a tremendous amount of heat and taking it to our John Deere dealership. I was a little bit concerned about how much force we'd applied and heating it and cooling it a bunch until I saw the price of a new one. It was almost $750 to replace this part. I made the logical decision to buy a $16 can of Hagee yellow spray paint. You can't even tell that this thing's been used and abused. Almost looks brand new. Well, other than the piece of wood stuck to it. Just disregard that. It's better than it looked. put the snap ring on now. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. The principle remains though, that I want to put it back the way it was. That on? Yeah, it should be. Probably should have thrown some WD-40 on this, as miserable as it was to get out. Did it start? Oh, we got it. Nice. Okay. That was a lot easier with two people.
Well, hell, it wouldn't hurt at all.
Now you show up to help. I needed you about 20 minutes ago.
I have you.
Yeah, you're gonna help me? Thank you. It's broken over here, bud. He's a much more motivated employee than I am. You'd never catch me running to fix something. How's it look? Oh, this one's lame compared to that one. It seems kind of dangerous for you to have a screwdriver of that size. Yeah? Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
I want to buy him.
Everything's hooked back up and tied back in except for the breakaway tension cable. I'm going to run and get those extra bolts I need before I fasten that down. Then we'll fire the Hagee up and make sure that the height sensor works. And if so, we'll be good to hit the road. And by hit the road, I mean fold the Hagee up and get it out of the way, because it's been in the way this whole week. Time for another parts run. Holy smokes, this is what I need pulling my chemical tanker. Look at this thing. Bet the jake brakes on that would wake someone up. At this point, I've worked on this project long enough that I'm ready to be done with it. I'd say she's fixed, back in operating condition. All I gotta do is fire it up and make sure that the NORAC height sensor is still working. And then, other than that, maybe hit something with the breakaway to make sure it's gonna break away. You know what, let's just wait for a natural opportunity to arise to hit something with the breakaway. I'm not gonna go out of my way to slap something. Where's the quiet setting for this fan? There it is. Okay, we gotta pull up our NORAC page here, give her the check mark. Has to be done every time you fire it up. Now when I hold this red button, it should resume. You're good on the left side, which is not surprising. The surprising part is that we're perfect on the right side as well, so I think we're good to go. Now that I think about it, I probably ought to see if I connected that boom back together correctly. It appears so. Surprising for my work. As I was just playing around with the Hagee, it dawned on me that I've cleaned the tank out, I've run a lot of water through the booms. Arguably, this thing should be crop safe for anything I put in the tank and go spray. Then I remembered, I haven't even touched my main inline strainer or my two boom strainers, which could have solidified product in them that could pose a risk for harming a sensitive crop, so to speak, if some of that breaks loose when we're spraying the next round of fungicide. If we even spray fungicide, depending on whether or not it rains. Not gonna spray the fungicide if we don't have a crop. this is the main one right here. I think it gives you a special set of wrenches to get everything off. This bleeds the pressure. Now, I'm going to move some stuff back because I've seen what this can do. Other than a little chemical in the strainer itself, this ought to be fairly clean water. Something built up in there. For all I know, this actually could be dried dish soap residue, because I use a lot of dish soap when I'm cleaning everything out. And if it dries, it does kind of leave a little bit of residue wherever it is. Hell, looks like that's what it is. Between the Hagee and a few other piddly off-camera projects, I've managed to waste almost the entire day. I'm gonna do one more thing before I head home, and that's take this loaded semi-truck down to TGM in Neoga. I brought this in yesterday evening. I didn't have time to get it to the elevator, and to be honest with you, it just really wasn't on my mind today. Try not to leave the semi-trailers loaded for an unnecessary amount of time if you can avoid it. I'll get this load off before the elevator closes today. That way the springs on the trailer can take a little break. Coming dumping on the old side today. Normally I'd tarp my truck before leaving it here to sit, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it rain. Just need to go cut some hay somewhere. I could leave the windows down. That's kind of pushing it though. Fast forward a couple days and I've pretty much got my sprayer ready to hit the fields. Made a few changes, although nothing major. Obviously we've got our main Y strainer in as well as our secondary boom strainers. Other than getting product back to the wet boom, it's pretty much in working order now. I went ahead and took off all of my other spray nozzle tips and put on the last set I'm going to use this year for spraying fungicide and crop protectants. That is the size 4 T-Jet twin turbo jets, or maybe turbo twin jets. I always get it backwards. They're size 4 turbo twin jets. I think that's right. These are the same nozzles I use for spraying our Liberty at 20 gallons an acre, albeit I went 2 sizes down. The reason for that is that most of our fungicide is going to be applied at 15 gallons an acre, and I also want higher pressures to get better coverage and more penetration into the canopy. That's why we have a size 4. I may be limited a little bit at my top speed depending on how fast I want to run across the ground. I could actually max out the specifications or the flow rate for these nozzles. Not sure where that is. It's probably 16 miles an hour if I had to guess. They get overpressured and they can't keep up. No big deal though. I'm probably not going to be running as fast spraying fungicide, especially in corn. If we do spray fungicide at all, because if it doesn't rain, we're not going to throw more money at a crop that's not going to cover all of our input costs. Much like when we were applying Liberty, the goal here is coverage. That's why we went with the twin nozzle pattern here. We've got one kind of spraying at an offset forward and one spraying backwards, hopefully covering all of our corn plants effectively. And actually the reason I've got this done is because I am planning on doing some trial work with some cool products tomorrow or sometime in the next few days. So I wanted to have everything ready to go. On the same lines, I'm also putting some water in the spray tank to a tune of 900 gallons. Gonna flush a little bit more clean water through the booms, and then whenever we start that next project, I'll mix in the product in this tank with our well water we're using as a carrier, and then go spray. Looks like the automatic overfill shutoff switch on the Hagee isn't working. To be honest, I don't know how long this has been running for. Quite a while. It sure is hard to find good help. It also just dawned on me that I didn't even check all the nozzles I just installed. So good opportunity to bleed off a little bit of this water, clean water, out the tips, fire it up, turn it on, get some pressure, and make sure they're all installed correctly. This one on the end almost needs some kind of a drop on it because it's actually hanging up on the frame a little bit. Same with this one. I wonder if all of the winglet ones need that because the nozzle bodies sit up in the frame a little bit. T-Jet makes a little extension that drops it down an inch, and I think just a little bit of drop would get it past this frame because only the outer edge of the pattern is actually getting caught up in there. You see on the main wing section, it doesn't quite sit as recessed into the frame itself. I mean, these nozzles are almost flush with the bottom of the boom here. You get out to the wing, the wet boom sits higher in, you get a lot more contact with the boom itself. At this angle, you can actually see the twin jets. You see one fan shooting forward and one fan shooting backwards. You want to talk about a visual representation of how drift happens. Clean water, so don't worry about the mist that's leaving the sprayer. Got about a 15-mile-an-hour wind today, and you can see that high pressure is coming out of these tips. It's just taking all of those driftable fines and blowing them away. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's do some trial work. This Utrisha N, which is a Corteva product, I believe they license it from another smaller company, is going to be 2 of our 3 trials we're doing today. This was provided by Corteva. Nothing to do with the YouTube channel. It's just a research data acquisition deal. They want to see how this product performs on both corn and soybeans. So that's what we're going to start off with. Someone's excited to see us. We're doing 2 30-acre trials, so we're going to need 60 acres worth of carrier, 15 gallons an acre, that's 900 gallons of water. I put a little bit extra in there last night just to spray anything out of the booms that might have set up while it was out here in the moonlight, I guess. I don't know. I just wanted to be able to run a little water out. I'm going to spray till we're about 900, then we're going to mix in that Utrisha. It won't take very long to run off 50 gallons of product. Okay, it seems a lot slower when you sit there and stare at it. As the old timers say though, a watch pot never boils. So we'll do something else. Sight tube says 900. We'll go ahead and put our Utrisha in the tank. Just like a white powder. Almost looks like sugar. Pump is already on, I've got pressure to it, so all I gotta do is flip this switch. Yeah, you can definitely tell it's agitating based on the amount of liquid on the camera lid. If I'm planning on actually going down the road, I probably ought to shut my bottom shields. We've got a 75-acre field south of home, about 2 miles. You want a decent amount of acreage so you can have some comparative data, and you want it close to home so you don't have to drive 1,000,000 miles to go spray your trial products. These beans don't look horrible, although this is fairly light ground, so the lack of moisture is really slowing down growth. You can see on this west end row on the left side of the frame that the beans haven't even reached canopy yet, which is unusual. The spot I'm standing in right now, unfolding the sprayer, has nothing to do with the drought. There's some kind of drainage issue that goes on here. I don't know if there's old clay tiles blocked up here. We've not successfully grown a decent crop other than weeds here in probably 5 or 6 years. Every year it's the same old story of replanting and just nightmarish conditions in general. It's only like 3/4 of an acre, so it's not a big deal. It makes a perfect spot to unfold. Yes, I have my gloves on because I know how much it bothers you guys. I will be able to access my RTK lines that I used earlier. I want to make sure I do new work so the swath control works. And then we are going to go in here and change the product we're applying. Where is that setup? Right now we're doing Enlist. The product we are putting in is called aTrippy. I assume it's some kind of play on nutrition. Nutrition, they kind of sound similar. I'm just putting June to indicate that we're doing this in June because I do plan on coming back with the fungicide and actually adding in a little bit more. One thing you'll see here, like I said, I can just go in here, pull up SB post, which was my slang for soybean post application. Now we've got the line. I shouldn't even have to recenter it. I just pull up and turn the auto steer on. If I turn over here and pop the auto steer button, let's see how close it gets me. Right on the money, it seems. Before I take off, I'm going to comment on the product we're about to try on 30 acres of beans and 30 acres of corn. It is a biological that is provided to us by Corteva for research purposes called aTrippy. Basically, biologicals are the next frontier, in my opinion, of crop protectants, or I guess supplements is a better word. They are life forms, in this case, a colonized form of bacteria that is supposed to be able to fixate nitrogen from the atmosphere on the leaves of growing plants. We actually tried 2 passes of this a couple of seasons ago. I didn't see any notable benefit on the beans, although like I said, we did not really isolate variables. We put it with our herbicide pass and then came back with our post fungicide pass. The issue with that is that it was custom application, nothing against the applicators, though I'm fairly certain they were using municipal type water, meaning it was fully treated, probably chlorinated, and as you could guess, chlorine is very good at neutralizing biologicals like aTrippy. That's literally the point of it, is to eliminate life forms. The chlorine could have counteracted the product. In this case, we're using our well water, which is not chlorinated, and it's full of micronutrients, so it's kind of a win-win here. Who knows, if we get a yield bump, it may be from our nice well water that's untreated. I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm fairly certain that Corteva licenses this product. That's kind of common in the chemical game. A lot of times one company owns the intellectual property of some of these products, and then if there's actual merit to it, some of the big dogs, Corteva, Bayer, Syngenta, might license that from the company. This product is promising. I mean, if this can work, it's a pretty big deal, although I don't think it's readily available for sale yet, so they're still compiling data, which is why farmers like me are spraying and collecting harvest information. The reason I'm wanting to get this sprayed earlier in the morning is because when the sun comes out and the heat of the day kicks on, especially with drought symptoms, all of our plants, both corn and soybeans, will basically hunker down and conserve moisture. To do this, they roll up, they close their stomata. The stomata is how this biological infiltrates the leaves. If the stomata is closed, we aren't going to get as good of infiltration, and the colonization of this bacteria won't be as good. We're trying to avoid that, so we're spraying earlier in the morning. Only a little bit rough. Off the end a little bit before I kick it back on. It's safe to say at 15 gallon an acre with these size 4 tips, we are just absolutely fogging this on, which is really what you want. I'd like to see a better canopy because that means that more of the product is ending up on the soybeans, but Mother Nature is kind of preventing that from happening with a lack of rain. Oh yes, it knows. Or does it? Whoa! It is so confused right now. We'll change it on the next round. This is a learning process for me too, folks. Don't worry. Zoom. I don't know. I'm gonna have to make a call on that one. I don't know if you're supposed to run it in manual on corn. This thing's all over the place. I mean, it's getting 3 or 4 foot above canopy. Just running it manually seems to be the best option for now, although I'm also in a field that's pretty flat. If it was uneven terrain, this would not work as well. We'll have to make some phone calls in the next couple weeks before we spray fungicide, if we spray fungicide on corn, to see how everyone else is running it. There's no doubt in my mind that this dry weather is hurting us. The beans were obvious that they haven't reached canopy. The cornfields are extremely uneven. I moved down to the north end of this field, which is some darker soil, more productive. You can see the obvious difference between the dark and the light ground. The light stuff is just way behind. It's struggling for moisture. The vegetative growth is underwhelming at best. If it doesn't start raining here in the next couple of weeks, I mean, this crop is going to go off a cliff very fast. Even the dark ground will run out of moisture soon. It doesn't look that bad, really. I mean, the crop's okay, but it should all be flush and even. It's not. Just ran out of chemical. Gonna go back, fill up with a little bit more water, and try and spray one more trial. Although, if it takes too long to fill up with water, I may wait till tomorrow to do the next trial, just because I don't know how warm it's gonna get today, and if the crop starts to kind of lock up and protect itself, I don't want to waste product. Back to the old watering hole. Get some more of that well water for our next product, assuming we have the patience to wait for this to fill up for an hour and a half before we roll. Water's on, should be ready by next week, I think. To summarize the aTrippy we just put on, basically that biological is exploring different alternatives to synthetic nitrogen to add more nitrogen to our crops, both corn and soybeans. I know a lot of you are thinking, well, soybeans are a legume. They work in a symbiotic relationship with the rhizobium bacteria to fixate nitrogen at the roots. They feed themselves. A lot of data, and I'm not going to say a lot of data, but there's a lot of chatter amongst farmers, agronomists, researchers, that there may be room to increase our top-end soybean yields by providing more nitrogen. The data is very hit or miss on that. Some people swear by it, other people say you're going to make your soybeans lazy. I don't know, but it doesn't hurt to try products like that, especially on soybeans. And if we can find something like this aTrippy that is a full year supplement, it's very easy to implement in a regimen and hopefully in a cost-effective manner, although I have no idea what that product would cost at market. The last 30 acres, obviously, we put on corn. Corn loves nitrogen. Almost all the nitrogen on corn comes from synthetic sources, whether it be anhydrous 32, your phosphate fertilizers. All of those different products provide nitrogen, on top of a little bit of mineralization in the soil from previous soybean crop nitrogen, residues in the ground, yada, yada, yada. Basically, just looking at ways to add even more nitrogen to our corn. That's just seeing data on both of them. You got to try it to figure those things out. Looks like we're just passing 700 gallons on the sight tube, so I timed this about right. Unfortunately, what I found to do to pass the time, why that filled up, was not that enjoyable. We had a tragedy on the farm. One of my sister's cats, one of the kittens from the mama cat she took in last fall, had an incident on the road, not farm related, but just something that happens to cats, so I had to help do some digging to put the cat into its final resting place. Definitely hard on Katie and her kids, just tough all around, especially just because cats are so fun to have and unique little personalities, so to see one pass away is not good. Just part of living on the farm and part of life in general. We're gonna fire the Higgy back up here once we get the next round of product in here and put our next trial down. I better get this next product in the tank and get it agitated because it's starting to get fairly warm. It hasn't rained at all, obviously, not that it's gonna rain, and these stomata are gonna be closing up pretty quick. Some of you may be familiar with this product, the real deal. Syngenta's flagship corn herbicide, Mirvis Neo. No, this is not a biological like what we just put on our first trial runs. This is in fact a fungicide. Although some ingredients in the fungicide do provide a little bit of plant health benefit, which is what we're trying to kind of test right now, because based on the dry weather, the growing conditions so far, there's probably not a lot of disease present, though that doesn't mean that there isn't disease we don't see. We're just looking to see if we give our corn an early hit of fungicide, is there some good yield to be found or to be improved on. Unlike the Corteva product, we are footing the bill for this one because it's not exactly research and development, it's more of just seeing things we can do on our own farm to improve yields. This Mirvis Neo is a fairly expensive fungicide. Dump it in there. Looks like milk. Doesn't smell like milk though. Each one of these 2.5 gallon jugs has enough product for about 23 acres. So I'm gonna put enough to do 46 acres. Probably do a little strip or checker on one farm and then do the same on another. Should have kept the hose up here. Looks like melted ice cream. Here's the product label for those of you who are curious. I know a lot about what fungicides do, but I don't think I'd be very good at explaining it. Basically, fungicides offer systemic and preventative measures to control fungal infection in corn plants, and we also use a different type of fungicide or product of fungicide on our soybeans. Fungal pathogens offer a lot of opportunity for yield loss. That's why some people like to use fungicides. I'd say it's probably 50-50, 60-40 maybe on farmers that use fungicide versus those that don't. It's hybrid dependent. Some hybrids and soybean varieties are more sensitive to disease, so they see more response to fungicides. I'd say when crop prices are high and the crop's looking good, a lot of people apply fungicides. When crop prices are low, or maybe the crop is looking less than ideal, people will kind of hesitate to put more money in it, which is kind of what I talked about. We may not spray a regular application of fungicide on our corn if it doesn't rain. This is an earlier shot than we normally do. Typically, fungicide is applied on corn anywhere from tassel to brown silk, in that range. We're going out there probably a couple weeks before tassel. I don't even know what vegetative stage we are because our cornfields are so sporadic, uneven, and not growing normally that this is definitely an early pass. People are trying a lot of things with different timing of fungicides, 2 passing, 3 passing, staggering it out, trying to time the weather, the disease pressure perfectly. Just again, another way that farmers are looking to see if there's products we can put out in our fields to get a good return on our investment. These newest generation of fungicides from Syngenta, from BASF, from Bayer, also have an ingredient in there that helps promote some crop health. I think that's kind of what we're looking for here with this pass. If this Miravis Neo can give our corn a little bit of stress mitigation on top of controlling any diseases that are present that we can't currently see, maybe we'll get a handsome yield bump. Keep in mind that a full rate of Miravis Neo, and if you account for your application cost, you're going to be looking at $30 to $35 an acre. At $6 corn, where we're at right now, you pretty much need to see 6 bushels an acre to justify putting this down once. And technically you need to see 12 to justify putting it on twice. There's some spotty data that has shown tremendous, I mean absolutely phenomenal returns on 2-pass fungicide, although like I said, very intermittent. We're going to see if it works on our farm. I'm going to go spray a couple checkers on a few fields. I may have waited too long, ladies and gentlemen. This corn's already starting to curl up. I'm out here, I'm going to go ahead and put this on, but this data may be invalidated by the stress on the corn. It's not good when the corn looks like this early in the day. It's like some pineapples. Definitely could be worse, don't get me wrong, just not a good sign for the end of June. There's definitely some hybrid sensitivity going on, because if you look at this corn here on the hill, it looks better on arguably worse dirt. Also a different shade of green, so I think we had a different hybrid in here. Doesn't necessarily mean that this corn is going to yield less. What it could mean is that this corn just rolls up more in the presence of dry condition. Everyone's different. Hybrids are just like you and I. We handle things differently. The outcome could still be the same. Geez, this is usually one of our best farms, but it is terribly uneven out here. Lack of rain's not doing it any favors. If it doesn't rain, ladies and gentlemen, I can almost definitively say that I will not be spraying corn this year with this Hagee, which was the entire reason I got it. See, this corn looks a lot better. They're not that far away from each other, similar dirt, same amount of rainfall. Just a hybrid thing, I guess. Yeah, I probably should have put my row feelers on. This would be much easier. Alrighty, that'll do for our trial work. Now let's just hope it rains. Just to show you guys the 2 little trials I just did. 2 passes on this field, which is a fairly long field, so that ended up to almost 20 acres. Corn fungicide. Then we came over here, did a variety of passes. I skipped a row, so this should be good harvest data, assuming it yields and this matters at all. If not, it was like throwing water on a grease fire. It's not going to make a difference. Hope it rains. Since it's Friday, I'd love to go home and do nothing for the rest of the day. I know that Chris and Jeff have been hammering away on our last bin of corn and grain in general, so I'm going to go help them fire up my semi, haul some corn. One of these days, the concrete people ought to show up and pour the pad for this new bin, or at least I'd hope so, because This gravel's been sitting here for 3 or 4 weeks now, blocking the shed. I couldn't even get stuff out and start washing it if I wanted to. I mean, technically, if I really needed to get something out, you just push the gravel to the side, but it's been a good excuse. Never mind that idea. I had good intentions, but Dad told me not to screw with it. They're not gonna be in it today. No reason to get started on that on a Friday afternoon. Be a good Monday project. It's probably got another load in it. The good news is that we don't have to carry the sweep in Monday morning, seeing as there's already one attached to the floor. These beans on light dirt sure could use a rain. A lot of guys in our area that farm some of these lighter soils, including us, have been very fortunate over the last 5 or 6 years to have fairly wet growing seasons. The light dirt has the yield potential if it rains. If it does not rain, this lighter soil, less productive, less water holding capacity, will burn up quicker than anything we got. You can definitely see some variation in these soybeans based on soil type discrepancies. I've also got 2 different varieties side by side out here, so every 60 foot there's a different soybean variety, and in this case one of them is a tad bit more green currently than the other. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to yield more. It's just greener at this stage. At this point, I just sure hope it rains. It's not gonna be pretty if it doesn't. Unless it doesn't rain for the rest of the growing season, we'll still have enough of a crop to have to harvest everything. If you have a bad enough drought and your insurance zeroes everything out, meaning your crop isn't even worth harvesting, then you don't have to harvest it. Usually we have to harvest though, which is no fun harvesting 30 bushel corn, 5 bushel corn. There's some bad yields we've seen in the last 10 years. I personally get disappointed when we're harvesting anything without a 2 on front of it in corn. We had corn in 2012, so 11 years ago now, a very bad drought where entire fields didn't even make 200 bushels total. It was that bad. And we're on track to do that same thing, although there's a lot of growing season left. So this can turn around at any point in the next couple weeks if it starts raining. But we're gonna need a lot of rain. Sweeping that last bin out is going to be a beginning of the week project, the way I prefer it to be. Alrighty folks, I've reached the point in the video where I'm no longer doing anything worth recording, or at least I would think so, just spraying around some field edges. Nothing too exciting. I really don't have anything too pressing to leave you with at the end of this video, other than the fact that I hope that the small chance of rain we have this weekend comes to fruition. We're really going to be reaching dire straits. I mean, talking about the point in which the slow decline becomes the rapid descent. If our corn shoots tassels and starts to reach the reproductive life cycle stages, it's gonna take a huge yield hit if it hasn't already lost a little bit off the top right now. Anything less than an inch of rain at this point is a non-event unless there's another inch of rain a couple days away. We need a lot of water to make up the deficit we've reached so far in May and June, but I'll let you know in the next video whether or not we actually get anything. As always, I greatly appreciate every single one of you continuing to tune in and support the channel. Your viewership means the world to me. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Until then, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!